Is the screen visible?
Sure, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with the theories of colonial discourses. We have already had a brief background to what is meant by the colonial discourse. And we are going to study colonial discourses, especially with reference to two gentlemen who have made quite a lot of contributions to the field. So, first and foremost, we'll be talking about Frantz Fanon. Are you familiar with Frantz Fanon? No. So, now what is a colonial discourse? Colonial discourse is that study which looks at representations and modes of perception. Modes of perception is our way of understanding, our way of seeing the world. So, how these things are used as weapons or tools by the colonial power to keep the colonized people subservient as in lowly and paying obeisance, showing deference and respect and awe towards the colonial rule. As I told you, how we tend to look down upon brown skin, dark skin. We tend to look up to things like English language, Western culture, Western civilization. All this is actually nothing but a fallout of the colonial discourse. So, what is the colonial discourse? It's nothing but a way of representation, a way of seeing the world, wherein you create dichotomies. So, the West stands for everything that is civilized, wonderful, refined, knowledgeable, compared to the colonies and the colonized, who actually stands for the ignorant, the dark, the evil, everything that the West is not. Understand? So that is meant by the colonial discourses. So it's a way of representation, it's a mode of perception, it is a way of making people in the colonies believe that they are inferior. So these values are internalized. Internalized is it becomes a part of your subconscious, unconscious understanding. You start to believe in these things. So the fact that even today you have even educated people in India hankering after or going for uh, you know white tone and white beauty creams and fair and lovely. All this is nothing but a continuation of the colonial project. So these values are internalized. It becomes a part of our psyche by the it becomes a part of the psyche of the blacks and the colored people. We are the coloreds, and this actually leads to a detrimental effect, that is a negative effect on our psyche. And in our textbook there is a very interesting you could say example given by this Trinidadian writer Sam Selvon. He talks about an experience from his own youth, from his own childhood. So when he was staying there in Trinidad, there was this West Indian person called Sammy. Sammy, he was quite rich, but nobody really gave him any respect or anything. And one day, what happened was Sammy had lots of business and all. He was a wealthy man, but he was a West Indian. So one day, what he saw was Sammy was going around the town with a white man. And who's this white man? He was an assistant to this black Sammy. So this kind of shocked this young boy, Sam Selvon. He was really shocked because he had been taught right from the beginning that whites are always the bosses and the blacks are always servants. But and when he saw this kind of an aberration as in abnormal kind of a thing, wherein Sammy was the boss and this white man actually was someone who was jailed and that kind of a white person. So somehow he cannot digest the whole thing, and he felt very angry that how dare this black man make this white man an assistant. At that time he was only a child when he thought about it, and later when he grew up he started questioning his own assumptions and perceptions about the power equation between the whites and the coloreds. You understand? So this is the kind of damage that has been done by the colonial discourses, wherein we ourselves think that this is the right order, that this is the real order of life, that that is, the white people are the powerful, the dominant, the right, and the colored and the black people. are always subservient. They can always be, just attenders and drivers and lowly menial servants kept by the white people. And therefore, everything represented by the Western, the white, is superior compared to whatever is there in the native people.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes,
Ma'am, can we get out of this colonial discourse? Because if we are going for a marriage or we are committing someone, we will always what prefer white, isn't it?
yes,
If it is an arranged marriage, also we will
yes.
always prefer white.
Look,
So, can we get out of this colonial discourse? Is it possible?
it is possible. It is possible. We can and we should strive to. So, as educated people, you and I, at least we are discussing about this, and we need to ask ourselves and be very honest whether we will be comfortable with marrying, with the idea of marrying someone with a darker skin, someone who is not very proficient in English. So, if it is a yes to all this, it shows that our mindset has become freed from this particular mentality. Understand? It's not
Yes,
that
ma'am.
very
Ma'am,
easy. Yeah.
also about the our students, because about our children. If we are
Yes.
giving we will be inferior to give them the award the education in Malayalam medium schools or giving them the education in government schools other than
Mm,
giving we will be inferior because we will feel that is it right to give them education in government schools or in CBSE schools, isn't it,
correct.
ma'am? We
Yes.
will be
Correct.
confused
Correct.
of is it right, will they question us after growing to someone and they will question us why didn't you give us the proper
Yes.
education. We will be
That's also
confused of
right.
all these things. So what about your opinion, ma'am?
Yeah. We're talking about English medium and Malayalam medium. There are now in today's Kerala, when you look at it, there are very good Malayalam medium schools which also teaches and takes English quite seriously. So this is not at the cost of uh, not learning Malayalam. There are people who have done really well for themselves by learning or doing their education in Malayalam medium schools. But then there is another fact also that many of these government schools or Malayalam medium schools have not been given the proper care and attention by the government, the authorities. Maybe the teachers are not really qualified. As a result of which, Malayalam medium schools have always been considered to be a second class or third class. That's another ground reality. But still, it's quite you say you could say heartening to see that there are efforts being made by many managements, even government officials, to make Malayalam medium schools also better, and at the same time giving a lot of importance to English also. So English is nothing but just another language. That's all. So you can be very proficient in Malayalam and at the same time use English as a tool. So if you make a choice of that kind of a school wherein both the languages are given importance and most of the teaching may be done in Malayalam, but at the same time English is also taught in a very decent manner, it should not be a problem. But then if we end up in, put our children in schools wherein nobody bothers and teachers are not properly qualified, there we stand to lose, we stand to destroy the children's future, and in the and later we will be kind of blamed by them. You understand? So this is not to say that we should not be sending them to Malayalam medium or we should be sending them only to English medium. That is not the idea. When Malayalam mediums are good. These days there are so many smart schools and smart what do you call smart classrooms. Every now and then we see it in the media, don't we? Some are doing such wonderful job of teaching children. Some government schools. Understand? So only thing is we need to be open and knowing Malayalam and learning Malayalam is never inferior or it's not going to kind of stop you from making a very good career, and
Ma'am,
it
also
should.
I want to ask you about I was talking about the parents' thought process because I
Hmm,
know so many parents who are giving or what they are putting the students in CBC schools and they are
hmm,
saying that they are going for works which is the daily work daily for daily wages and they are saying that
hmm,
I want to give them good education, so I am what they are putting them in the CBC schools and they are even not thinking about the government schools. They are even, we said that the government schools are good, and they are keeping up with the CBC schools. They are good, good enough than CBC schools. They are saying that it's not like that. We want to give them good education. So
Yes,
how will this thought process change, ma'am?
it
Is
will
it
take
because
some
of
time.
this? Can we connect this to the post-colonial discourses?
We can connect. See, whatever all these things, our obsession with English, our obsession with English is there, like, that superiority or whatever, that social status, that social consciousness, all that is there. It's still there in our psyche. And another thing is, to be very honest and very frank, being very good in English will always fetch you jobs. It will always help you retain jobs. You will become a hot property in the job market. You agree or not? Because it's a language of business. It's a language of upward mobility. It's a language of money, more or less, right? And we are not a country like Germany or France, which can insist that that we will use only our mother tongue, and if others come to work, they have to learn our language. We have not become a developed country like that. So English in that way is important, is very important. So there is this, you could say, anxiety among the parents, and many of them, they themselves are not that educated. They missed out on this kind of an education, so that anxiety of not giving what they missed in their own life to their children troubles them. So, and also there is this general perception that government schools are all bad, but now we know things are changing. It will take some time, and it's out of their anxiety that they are doing all this, not because they dislike Malayalam or whatever. Just because they didn't get it in their life, they would go to any extent, as you said very rightly. Even daily wage earners, people who go into all these kind of labor oriented jobs, they also try to put their children in the best schools in the hope that they may make a better future, which they themselves could not make. So that is one thing, that economical benefit that you get out of English education. It's always been there, and it is there, whether you like it or not. Otherwise, you have to become somebody very very proficient in your mother tongue and then create a career out of that, which is not the cup of tea for everyone. That's also there. So the average ordinary person would always think about the economic benefit that would come out of the education, because what you invest and what you're going to get out of it. And that bad reputation enjoyed by all, I mean, not enjoyed, the bad reputation that is associated with all these vernacular medium schools like Malayalam medium or Hindi medium or Tamil medium or whatever, because they have done a bad job till date, most of them. But now things are changing. You have the new education policy also, which speaks about giving primary education in Malayalam, along with stressing on English. That should be the idea. But it'll take some time. But then we have to be conscious and aware, and we should not be blaming them also, because this is all that they know. They don't know anything outside this. So if we get a chance to talk to people about it, maybe we should do that and follow the things, I mean, that we are discussing here in our own life, when it comes to our own life. So when you're thinking about your prospective husband or wife or whatever, just see where you stand. So maybe change can begin with you and I, rather than changing the whole society, whatever, in tiny drops here and there. What do you think?
Yes, ma'am. We want to change our own perspectives first, then the
Yes.
society will change.
Yes, and it's not that easy. See, for people
Yes,
like us
ma'am.
who are educated, also it is difficult. So you can very well imagine a common ordinary worker, a common ordinary person, how difficult it would be. So maybe we should try not to judge them, but then try and understand the whole politics of the same. And the politicians are the ones who are kind of making hay. They are benefiting out of these kind of mindsets, and they try to perpetuate the mindset. And our what you call industrial houses are also actually making money out of the same mindset. You talk about these FMCG goods, soaps and detergents or beauty creams or whatever. They're all thriving on this. But as long as we are aware of it, well and good. Yeah. So now
Thank you, ma'am.
yeah. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, these colonial discourses actually dwells upon it, studies these ways of seeing of the binaries. that is superior and inferior. So this constant drumming of these beliefs, again and again and again, we are told and we are brainwashed into believing these things as truths. So what happens is it leads to internalization. That is, we actually take it into our minds, into our belief system. It goes into our conscious, our subconscious, and our unconscious. So once it goes into our mind, deep mind, that becomes our belief. We blindly believe it without really thinking about it. So this is also called the colonizing mind, the mind. So these people, the Britishers and all, they not only colonized the land, the culture, they also colonized our minds. So it's an effective way of disempowering people. So what happens to the colonized people? They become disempowered. They lose their self-confidence. They start believing that they are inferior, they are other, they are stupid, they are insignificant, their language, their culture, their rituals, all this is funny, not good enough. And this can become a source of trauma, that deep psychological impact. And what does this lead to? We look down upon our own people and our own culture and our own selves. So we think Western education is the only way out, or only their culture is good, their dressing is good, and ours is not good enough. So this becomes something like colonizing the mind. So the colonizing happens not only at the level of economics and politics, but also at the level of psychology. Now, again, colonial discourses, it looks at the role played by language in getting people to succumb to a particular way of saying, that people become brainwashed. They also start believing in this, and they also start accepting it as truth. And then and we call it colonial discourses. Why? Because there are multiple varieties and multiple workings of this belief system. It's not only just one belief. It is there in almost all the spheres of life. You talk about economics, you talk about politics, culture, language, and language is something very, very powerful. We need to remember that language is not as innocent as it appears. Language denotes and connotes power. The kind of language that we use has a close association with power. So there is this what do you call intersection between uh, you could say power and language. So you have the white using certain words for the black people, like Negroes, nigger, oh you nigger. And that's a very derogatory word, and it has been banned. You cannot use these words anymore. So using these words, labeling people in a particular manner is actually nothing but the function of language. So language can become a very powerful tool in order to disempower people in the colonies. So you have these intersections where language and power meet, and this is used by the colonizers in order to subjugate the native people. So the colonized people, they are made subservient, they become servant-like. They reflect and they support the colonialist worldview. So we think whites are superior, white skin is superior, English language is superior, English way of life and culture is superior. So it is imbibed and it is kind of reflected by the native people. So a particular value system is taught as the best and truest worldview. Particular value system is the Western one. So we internalize the language of empire, representing as the natural order of life. So we think that this is very natural, that the whites are superior and we are inferior. So now this leads to a psychological damage in the people. So this was first studied by Frantz Fanon. So in the 1950s or so, Fanon, and there were other people also, but Fanon is one of the major figures who studied the psychological impact of this internalization of colonial discourses upon the mind of the colonized people. See, every day I am told that I am not good enough and I am ugly, I'm black, I'm stupid. When all these people tell me it again and again and again, what would happen to me? I would start believing in that. And then when you believe in that, what would happen? Your sense of identity, your sense of worth, everything would be destroyed and damaged, and you start suffering. So you have Frantz Fanon. He was a psychologist. He was a psychoanalyst. So he wrote widely on this. That is the psychological damage caused by the colonial discourses on the black people. He was born in the West Indies, this particular region called Antilles. And Antilles at that time was a French colony. So he was born in the French Antilles in 1925. And then he experienced racism firsthand. He went to good schools. He even got a work in the government hospital, but then everywhere he was under the white. So he experienced racism right from the beginning during his school days and college days, even when he started working for the French government. So he was the head of the psychiatric department of a government hospital. But then there was so much of racism experienced by him that he resigned from the post. He resigned from the post and he was really angry, upset, and humiliated. So, what did he do? He went and joined the Algerian rebels who were fighting against the French colonizers. So, the French had colonies in these West Indies and then also Algeria. So, he went and joined the Algerian rebels who were fighting against the French colonizers. He was deeply influenced by the other writers and thinkers like Jean Paul Sartre and Amy Seger. And he is remembered for two seminal publications. Seminal, as in you could say, um, benchmark standard kind of publications. They are seen as classics when it comes to understanding colonial discourses. The first one is called Black Skin, White Masks, and the other one is called The Wretched of the Earth. Now, look at the title: Black Skin, White Masks. So, he's talking about black people, how they are made to believe or made to internalize the Western values as superior. So, as a result, what do? They try to imitate the Western way of life, trying to be educated like them, trying to dress like them, trying to talk like them. So, they'll be wearing white masks, but then is essentially their skin is black. And in the end, what will happen? There will be something like a fracture within their uh, psyche, in their minds, because they themselves would not know what their identity is, because whatever identity they are trying to project is actually given by the white people. So how much ever they try to imitate the whites will never accept them as one of their own. They'll always consider the blacks as the other, someone inferior, stupid, insignificant, and someone who does not matter. So he is examining the psychological effects of colonialism, and this is based on his own experience as a psychoanalyst. So he had this opportunity of meeting many, many black people who were very unhappy, disturbed, mentally troubled because of the way they were treated by the white people. So he's examining how a black is rendered a peculiar person, an object of derision, that is being made fun of, an aberration. Aberration is something like abnormal, anomalous, due to the color of his or her own skin. And blacks become an object and they are no more a subject. That subjectivity is denied to the blacks. So black is an object, and this naming of that object, that identity formation of that object is done by the white man for the black. So the blacks are at the mercy of a group that identifies him as inferior. So he is at the mercy of the white people, and the white people, they identify him, they label him, they call him inferior, less than fully human, and living at the mercy of their definitions and representations. So it is the white who gets to define what a black is. And what is the white man's definition of a black person? That you're useless, that you're silly, you're inferior, you're ignorant, you're ugly, your language is horrible, your religion, your practices, your culture, your music, everything is bad compared to ours. That's the kind of definition and representation given by the white people for the black. So these people, the whites, they deny the rights to the black people to define their own identity as a subject. What is subject? Subjectivity is that very personal, emotional kind of a being wherein we take control of our own lives and we decide for ourselves our identity, right? Now, this right is actually taken away by the white people under the colonial discourse. So the white is always drumming in again and again and again that you are like this, you are like that, you are the other. Whatever you try, you can never be like us. In this instance, I would like you to remember Mahatma Gandhi's experience, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. If you remember, he went abroad. When he went abroad, if you have read his biography, autobiography, My Experiments with Truth, wherein he speaks about this particular chapter, playing the Englishman. So when he went there to become a barrister and all, when he saw the white people dancing and wearing Western clothes and all, he also tried doing that. He would go for dancing classes. He would try and eat meat and wear those kind of clothes, but even then he would never get accepted by the white. So, and there came a point in life later wherein he realized that he was simply trying to ape them, and he was just trying to be like them. But how much ever you do, whatever you do, you never get accepted as a white. So the same damage is being caused to the black people. So now, this work again, continuing with a discussion on the same book, Black Skin and White Mask. So in this book, he talks about how a black man's identity is made by the French, and this process it results in a violent splitting of his emotional self, the psyche. It is split into two, wherein you want to be something, but then you don't have the freedom to be that. Why? Because somebody else is forcing upon an identity on you which is not actually your identity. You're being given an identity by somebody else, and that identity is not a very comfortable label to live with. So he analyzes the power of description and naming. Naming a person, describing something is actually not very innocent. Naming, for instance, baptism, wherein you're naming someone by something, so it carries a lot of seriousness. What if our parents had given us some funny name? What would have happened to us? All our life we will be living under that. I know so many people who were so unhappy with their own names that when they grew up they went and changed their names. There are people like that because name is that ultimate label with which we are known by society and we are called by society all our lives. And here, the white people, they are naming them, Negro, nigger, you this, you that. So that naming and description is very, very powerful, and it has the effect of damaging people for life. So again, the relationship between language and power. To name and describe, you make use of language, and how blacks internalize all these things and they start considering and seeing themselves as the other. So the Negro, as opposed to what the French white people, he is an opposite of all that these people stand for. So what do the French stand for? For the civilized, the rational, the intelligent. Whereas the Negro is uncivilized. And this uncivilized nature is indexed by the black skin. That is, if you have black skin, then you are not civilized, you are not rational, you are not intelligent, you are not beautiful, you are not good looking, you are not any of these good things that the French people, the white, stand for. And look at this statement. This is very, very famous by Frantz Fanon. A man was expected to behave like a man. I was expected to behave like a black man. See that? A man was expected to behave like a man, but I was expected to behave like a black man. So when it comes to him, more than his manliness or being a man, what is his identity? His identity is this blackness. There is no running away from this. That is being reminded constantly about the color of his skin. And this color of the skin decides what he is according to the Western gaze. So this, according to him, the end of colonialism was not only economic and political change. That is what happened because of colonialism. It was not only economic and political change, but also psychological change. That is, there was this deep gash, damage caused by um, the colonizers on the psyche of the black people. And the other work by Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth, published in 1961. See, these were all initially written in French and later translated into English much later. This is also a book which more or less talks about what he spoke in the previous work. that is white skin and black mask. So again, looks at the psychiatric and psychological analysis of the dehumanizing effects of colonization. It's a very sharp and burning analysis of damage done to European culture and morality by Europe's destructive treatment of the third world. And he also criticizes the French policy in Algeria. And it shows a lot of anger and frustration. So, in conclusion, what we need to remember about Frantz Fanon is he's looking at and analyzing the effect of colonization on the colonized, that is the native, the black people. So, the focus was on what was happening to the subjects. All right. Now, after we are done with this, we'll be talking about the next person, that is Edward Said. And Edward Said would be talking about the colonizer, that is what the white people were doing. All right. So, the two people looking at the two different focus areas of the colonial discourse. Just let that sink into you. Just give me a minute. Okay.